What's up, friendly neighborhood nerds? If you want to hear interviews from industry pros, get first looks, and have access to endless comic content, wake up. Please wake up. You're in a coma. Your mother misses you.
What's up, friendly neighborhood nerds? This is Judah Rad, and I am here with Robo Strange. Today, Mr. Tim Seeley is back on our show. Last time we talked in depth about his work writing and drawing for things like Valiant, Marvel, Hack Slash, Money Shot, and other cool stuff. Today, we're veering away from his extensive art and writing to discuss his role as editor-in-chief for Heavy Metal Magazine. How is life, Tim?
Not too bad. Better than a few weeks ago, yeah. So, just trying to enjoy being stuck in the house for at least another 6 months. Probably.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Everybody's locking back down, huh?
I'm in Chicago, so we go in tomorrow. It won't change my life because my wife and I have been doing the exact thing they're recommending, which is not going to restaurants, not going to bars, and wearing a mask at all times, which is what we've been doing since last February. But yeah, so it's and I think it's necessary. We were doing really well all summer, but there's a testing facility not too far from my house, and we used to go in there if we were visiting my parents, it would take 10 minutes to get a test, and now it takes 6 hours. So clearly this has hit hard and people are scrambling. So
but there's a ray of hope now. The world has changed ever so slightly, and things are starting to maybe look up.
We'll at least have more organization, and that's what we need. So
That's right. You did. We got to bring it up. You brought it up before the recording, but I want to say it again because we know we were introduced to her last time. So where's the kitten?
I raised her up right. She turned out very nice. She was a really sweet kitten, and then my wife ended up being really allergic to her. To the degree of which her face popped up and she couldn't breathe. So we had another cat she's not as allergic to. So but we gave it to a friend of mine, and he was looking for a cat, and he was super excited. She's a super sweet kitty.
She is sweet.
Yeah, she's very nice.
Awesome.
So everything
It's always
worked out
hard.
great,
It's hard when they leave the nest, but sometimes it's for the best.
My kid was super attached to that kitten, so when it left, I brought her crate back in, and my 1-year-old was like, "Yay, kitty!" It's like, "Oh no,
No, the opposite.
no, sorry, no." But yeah, but it worked out great. So she's got a good home, and she's not living in my hedge.
Cool.
Nice.
So happy ending.
I'm gonna grab a big stack of something real quick. So, as Robo would tell you, I'm a pretty big Heavy Metal Magazine fan.
Yeah.
I'm something of a Heavy Metal Magazine evangelist in the sense that I'm always trying to get my friends to read it, and I feel like I'm just shouting at people constantly, trying to get them to get into this awesome magazine that's been around for so many decades.
This is absolutely a true story. So I've always seen heavy metal on the racks to the years where my mom was like, "Stop reading that's porn," to where I wasn't allowed to. But then for some reason, even when I was allowed to, it didn't really ever grab me. I'm like, okay, I looked through it. I'm like, I don't, it's whatever. And then Judah here, he would always be like, "No, they're changing it. They have a new setup, and I think you'll like this one." I'm like, yeah. And then he'll show me, if this happened with 300, he's like, "Yeah, check this one out." And I'll be in the store like, "Oh, that's really cool." And I put it back, and then you would hear the "Hello, darkness, my old friend," and then
just give it a chance.
so then I finally picked up 301.
Right.
Yeah, and so he was excited about that, but I don't have 300. So now I'm reading the stories. I'm like, wait, no, I gotta read 300 now. I gotta go get 300.
Yeah, that's thing with heavy metals. It staggers, so there's always something ending, something starting. So
Yeah.
I'll get you to go back and buy the other ones. That's
There you go.
Heavy metal.
It's always been kind of a struggle to find other heavy metal fanboys. What are up in the editorial and I guess above areas? What are you guys doing to sort of expand the audience right now?
Yeah, a big part of it obviously has been that heavy metal's kind of occupied a different place than the comics that you get at a comic book store. So the heavy metal's fan base is wide, but it's not the same people who traditionally come into comics stores on Wednesday to buy, Captain America and Green Lantern. It's a different group of people. So part of our thing has been, well, let's try to remind comic fans of all sorts that, that we exist, and we went monthly, which I think is a format that comic fans are more familiar with, because we had been quarterly before that. So putting out more often so people don't forget we exist. And we've been bringing in more people, I think, who comic readers, American comic readers, maybe are more familiar with. You know, people read Western comics in general. You know,
You've had Donnie Cates on there. You've
yeah, and so we've had, you know, recently at Just Jordan and Cullen Bond,
Jordan.
and you know, we'll have some Peach Momoko work, and we'll just have people that I think, you know, people are more familiar with on the traditional Western comics front. But you know, I think the audience has always been there for it, but they're just, you know, heavy metal traditionally came out 4 times a year, and you know, there was some lateness issues in the last 2 or 3 years, and you know, so that was part of the problem, I think, too. But now, you know, we just have to keep coming out and remind people that we're there and that we make good comics, you know, and that we're kind of a mainstay of it's actually like a more mainstream in a way comics audience, because traditionally the heavy metal audience was like people who grabbed it off the newsstand, so people going to the bookstore and people rushing to a train, you know, in New York City or a bus or whatever, or wherever. That was kind of who grabbed heavy metal traditionally. And obviously the business has changed a little bit without that news rack business, but you know, we're still chugging along. And I think, you know, people are sort of, when you say heavy metal, I think everybody knows the cartoon, the 1980s animated movie. That's the thing that I think people are the most you know, familiar with. So we've also been using those characters, the stuff that I think people are most familiar with, like Tarna,
yeah,
and B-17 and stuff like that. We've been using more of that stuff to remind people that, you know, that's us, you know, that stuff.
Stearns.
Yeah. I wish we had Stern. I wish we had all that stuff, you know, and the rights obviously for some of this stuff. Heavy Metal was always a creator-owned comic, so the rights return for most of that stuff to the people. We don't have it, so you know, we're not able to reprint all that stuff, but we're able to do the characters that we own, like Tarna and stuff.
Cool. Going back to the Heavy Metal movie, there's that one of the vignettes is very similar to The Fifth Element. It's the one where the guy's a cab driver and he comes across the woman. Yeah, and then that years later they made The Fifth Element. It was very similar to that. But then also the in call for Mobius is considered of an influence of The Fifth Element. So
well, I mean,
but Mobius,
that's the thing is, heavy metal, a lot of stuff is influenced by heavy metal and Metal Hurlant, the original, the French version of the magazine that they licensed to create heavy metal. But I mean, it's a huge impact on all kinds of, you know, people who are now prolific directors were reading heavy metal in the 70s and 80s. So I mean, you see it all over, you know, obviously the Fifth Element. So what's his name? The director, I just skipped my brain.
Jodorowsky and
that stuff obviously too, but yeah, the guy who directed Fifth Element for whatever reason, professional.
The guy,
Luc Besson. Yeah,
Luc Besson. Yeah.
David Fincher, huge fan of heavy metal. You know, all kinds of directors, if you talk to them, will say that heavy metal had an influence on them, because, you know, it was bringing these, you know, amazing cartoonists to the mainstream, and you know. If you were American, you were getting French cartoonists like Mobius, and you know, Italian cartoonists like Serpieri, and all these people that weren't being published in the U.S. came here because of heavy metal.
Cool.
So, word is floating around the interwebs is that heavy metal is going to be building its own universe. So, is that true? And if it is, then how is that going to be delivered to us, and how is that going to take form in heavy metal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about building a universe so much as we're, like we said, we're like, you know, I was talking about, we're using some of the stuff I think that people are most familiar with, characters like Tarna, B-17, some of those characters, and we're building stuff around that and kind of treating those characters like DC or Marvel treats Batman or Spider-Man, where, and, you know, we can invite people to work on, just like, hey, tell us a Tarna story. Here's the setup. And so, you know, the idea of sort of connecting them all, you know, is something we could obviously do. And we have a cover coming up that's Tarna and the B-17, now we call it Cold Dead War. Those characters in the same cover, but, you know, like, the importance of us tying everything together is less so than just like having a really cool, you know, platform to tell a bunch of stories and invite creatives to do stuff with characters that, you know, are sort of our version of the marquee characters. There are Superman, there are, you know, Batman and stuff. So so we're starting with that. So you'll see Tarna in heavy metal. She also has an ongoing series that's written by Stephanie Phillips. And
Is it connected to the Alex DeCampi series?
I mean, I don't think so. That part is still a bit murky to me as far as how that all went down. But this is basically continued from the film, sort of.
Okay, cool.
So, but so it's kind of a refresh, I guess, or something. But if you enjoyed the film version, and I think this will totally work for you. It's very cosmic and big idea, sword and sorcery kind of stuff. With
Power metal.
Yeah, it's very metal. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So, first of all, Darkwing is awesome, and Savage Circus is awesome. I enjoy both of those. What is the long-term strategy for the 299 issues that kind of focus on just one story from the anthology?
The Element story. Yeah, I mean, part of it is just so we put out a magazine, and the magazine has a certain price point, but I think comic readers are not used to anthologies specifically, so we're also offering, we can put out the Elements issue, which is like it's basically like number one issue of Savage Circus, or of Darkwing, of all those sort of interior stories that they're just like mini collections basically. It allows you're only interested in an idea like Darkwing, or you're only interested in Savage Circus, which is more of a horror story than a cosmic, sci-fi story. Then we can also kind of reach that kind of reader. That's something that's worked great for Marvel and DC for a long time. So that was the idea there. I think it's smart, and having these things that are very distinct, like creatively. Now they can be you get a little flavor of them in the magazine, but you can also get them very concentrated, delivered to you in the comics. A couple questions to unpack with that. So, is the goal to dissolve the anthology and eventually move to those? No. Okay. I mean, Never.
Never.
The anthology. I mean, the magazine is. It's a format that works. It's what we're known for, and it's a great platform for people to discover new talent and new ideas. So there's no reason ever to change it. And other magazines have failed, and in this harsh market for magazines, where we're still kicking and we're still doing well. So there's no reason ever to get rid of it. So we're just kind of
Are there going to be trade paperbacks for the individual stories like Darkwing eventually?
Yeah, right. Yes.
Oh.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay.
So it's just sort of like recognizing there's all this different ways to get stuff. And traditionally, heavy metal was a kind of combination of like licensed European stories with like new sort of independent creators. And now we're sort of combining. We're like changing that up a little bit. So we have commissioned stuff, we have submissions, and we also have licensed stuff. So the stuff that we have all of the rights to, we can print it here. If we can negotiate the rights to print an American version of like an Italian or a Spanish book, we'll do that here as well, which is something heavy metal's done for a long time. So it's just a way to get people more cool stuff and a bigger, slice of the worldwide comics pie.
How are you guys deciding which ones are going to become Element stories or not?
It's all the ones that we own, like that so we have all the full rights to. But we don't have, let's say, like something that is a licensed story from Glenat or Salil or some humanoids. We don't have the rights to publish those as individual comics in the U.S., but we may have the rights to publish them, as trades or in the serials or whatever. It's just different. We just work kind of differently than a company like Marvel and DC, which traditionally generates almost all of their own content and
That's right.
owns all the characters except those occasions where Marvel does Conan or whatever. But generally speaking, our stuff is all we're moving towards this sort of combination of licensed stuff and stuff we own and submissions and that kind of thing.
Makes sense.
So you wrote a very, very interesting and really good mini editorial for 301 about the constant need for new stories, even in a world that already has more stories than anyone could ever hope to read in one lifetime. It was obvious to me that, obviously the audience was us, the reader, but I couldn't help but think that the people who really need to hear that are the people in the big entertainment companies who would rather repackage old things than take risks on new stories. Is that what you had in mind were you thinking of like the reboot world that we live in, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always thinking about that. I think, it's just, I mean, for me, I'm kind of living this thing where I do believe that characters like Batman and Superman should always be there, because people are always coming in and trying out those characters. But I think, then to some degree, you have to leave those characters the same, right? They and it's okay that they sort of cycle through these same stories, and you're supposed to move on from those characters eventually and move into something else, which used to be stuff like independent comics and heavy metal. But I think to some degree, Marvel and DC have kind of been like, they, instead of trying to get new readers, they, for a while there, and I think they're much better now, but for a while there, they're just sort of like clamped onto the older readers and didn't let them go, and that inhibited the companies making new stuff, for older readers, because they were getting older reader Superman stories, which, like, how much of that should exist, really, right? I mean,
right.
These characters should be refreshable and palatable to kids, and make kids excited. And if you're doing like, and again, they've done a good job. I think DC's done a good job with Superman, but there's certainly like franchises that you can see where they sort of aged it up and lost the kids who would have read it, and I mean, I teach a college class, and none of my kids grew up on American comics, but they all read, American superhero comics. They all read, manga, and they all read, all ages comics, like, what's Dave Dapilki and all that kind of stuff. And so we miss those people because we refuse to give them anything for a good 20 years. And that's,
Right.
I think it's getting better now, but like, I always think about that, like, how are we bringing new people to this medium? And, are we thinking towards the future? And there was certainly a while there where publishers weren't.
It's the hottest debate in comics, it seems, is
It always will be.
what
Yeah.
should comics do? Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
I mean, that's the thing is, like, you guys, I like superheroes, I do, but I'm also sort of like not holding on to them with my bloody nails, trying to keep them from someone else reading them. Like,
That's right.
Yes.
and so I think that it's just this sort of like, you always have that sort of fight. Like, it's fine that Black Label exists, and that's great, actually, but like, there also needs to always be this refreshed Superman book that like a 10-year-old can pick up.
That's
and-
right.
Mm-hmm. Not
Maybe-
mired in I mean, DC's especially is so intimidating because even as like I would say I read a lot of comics and I'm pretty read in on it. Even for me, it's like, what the hell is going on? What am I supposed to read now? Like, what's the
Yeah.
story? Like, so I can't imagine a kid wanting to go through that to figure that out.
I mean,
Not
and
accessible.
I always ask in the class I teach, like, why didn't you read American comics? And traditionally they're like, well, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to start. I didn't, even if they were like, oh, I like Iron Man, they're like, well, what comic to read Iron Man? And I think to some degree, we all say, well, I started at issue 303 of, whatever of Amazing Spider-Man. It's like, yeah, but in that story, it probably was a 2-3 issue arc at most. And the characters constantly said, here's my deal, right? I'm Peter's uncle, or Peter's aunt, I'm sorry. And I'm, I'm dependent on him, and my name is May. And like, we would refresh that all the time so that people, and now I think there's a tendency to sort of feel like embarrassed about exposition and like all that sort of, but you kind of need to, because it is a
Serialized
medium, and superhero comics specifically is
That's
something that people come into, they pick it up on the rack, and they got it, and we all laugh about, like, every time Psylocke shows up, she says, the focused totality of my psychic powers is my psychic knife. And you're like, yeah, but if I didn't know that, like, I would definitely need to know why this lady has a pink glowing fist and she can shove in people's heads, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
So, last little bit about heavy metal. We know that over the years, heavy metal has kind of changed hands and had changing of the guards, and now you're here. How did you become involved with heavy metal?
Man, it's a weird thing, because I was always a reader of heavy metal and sci-fi comics in general, and fantasy comics and horror comics specifically. But I never kind of saw myself being any kind of editor. After I worked at Devil's Due as an editor, in 2002 and 3, and I was like, I'm not going to do that again, because I've done it for Image, and I've done my own books, and I don't want to manage that stuff, But my friend Jeff Krelitz bought heavy metal, or bought into heavy metal, and became sort of high level guy there, and Grant Morrison was kind of moving on, I think, from his position as editor in chief, and Jeff had just asked me at some point, like, hey, do you want to help out on this? I just need to bring some talent in. I know you'd love it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But I had turned that job down 4 or 5 times before I went into it. And then all the things changed, and the management changed, and Jeff's position moved on. And I was left there by my, without the original reason I took the job. But then the new people came on, and I heard what they had to say, and I liked them, and I liked what they were thinking. And, so I just keep doing it. And I like, I don't know, to me, it's a place to bring in stuff. Like, check out this thing. I think this is really interesting. You might like it. Like, that's what I use it for. I don't do a lot of like comics there. I don't write a lot of stuff. I don't draw too often. Like, I just sort of, I like it as a way to be like, this is an interesting talent. This is an interesting voice. I think the world should see this. And and then I get to work with some of my friends, and the other editors of Heavy Metal are great, Ricardo and Frank and Joe, and they're all just really like on the ball creative. So for me, it's just kind of, now it's like a weird fun part-time gig, I guess, in addition to my other fun part-time gigs.
So speaking of part-time gigs, will we see? Can we expect to see any kind of like heavy metal hack slash kind of duo type thing?
Well, I had thrown out a different crossover. I had thrown out a Money Shot one at some point.
Hell yeah!
Oh hell yeah!
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's also the thing with heavy metal stuff is like, it's usually very contained, and it's not sort of like Batman or Superman in that these characters have this sort of wide history and they easily cross over. So I don't know if it works, but
right.
I always thought it'd be fun, and to me, like, anything that you can put any two things together, to me, like, we had Hack Slash versus Milk and Cheese. So like, I have no problem just doing whatever story. I think you can come up with a story for everything. So, but yeah, I always think of the South Park story, the episode, The Maximum Boobage, where they did their parody of the Heavy Metal movie, and they, like,
I love that.
that's what I would do. It would just be like, it would be my version of Maximum Boobage.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I will back that.
Speaking of backing and Hack Slash, so I backed the hardcover. I'm very excited to get my hands on that. But congrats on funding your Hack Slash hardcover. I think Robo and I both backed it. Robo bought the old soft cover one, and then he saw there was a hardcover, and so
you know what? But it's my fault. So we have this I freaking love comics thing going. I have a responsibility to stay on top of headlines and Kickstarters, right? We need to be out there. But since I'm bad at this job, I didn't even know the Kickstarter was going, and
I mean, the thing is, I feel weird about Kickstarters in general because I'm not, I remember when Kickstarter first came out, like, this is like 2011 or 12 or something, maybe 10, 13. We did a Kickstarter for a comics thing, and then I posted on Facebook or something, and I had my mom and my aunt calling me being like, is everything okay? Do you need money? Like, it sounds like you're begging for money.
Because she thought it was a GoFundMe.
Yeah, wait, I mean, like, so I have a weird thing. For this, we wanted to make this for a long time. People have been asking for a hardcover, and for us, we were going to do it anyway. But this is a way to do like a pre-order, and also for us, like, we're basically kind of testing out how interested people are in a hardcover version of a book that is pretty easy to get. Like, you have a copy of the first time, it's pretty easy to get. But I think it's like a more of a high-end, item and stuff. And for part of it for us is like, okay, well, let's try this out. People are at home and it's hard to get anywhere, and let's try it now and see how it goes. And obviously it went really well. But like, yeah, I feel bad. I want my mom or my aunt calling me up and being like, "Oh, I sent you some money." It's like, no, we're good. I just, we just want to use this as pre-order. We were making it anyway. and this is a way for people to get it from us directly.
Awesome. Well, I'll have two, so maybe I will do the soft cover in a giveaway or something.
Yeah, there you go.
It was actually kind of just weird serendipity because so Judah knows. So as I collect my, as I'm in the middle of moving, so I'm in my daughter's old room right now. But I actually do own comics too, believe it or not. And I like hardcovers. I just like the way they look on shelves. And so I pick up this book, and I want to say last week, and I go, "Do you have this in hardcover? Can I order this?" And Luke was like, no, there was no hardcover. I'm like, dang, that sucks. All right, here we go. And like 2 days later, or however long, I was like,
what? He sees me on Twitter commenting on your thing, like, backed.
Yeah, I was like, what? Why didn't know what mother?
Well, you know, for us, you know, when we did the omnibus, this is going back to 2000. What was it, 2007 or 8? I think when we did the first omnibus. You know, there wasn't a lot of omnibus collections of this kind of book, and for us, it's always been the highest selling version of Hacks Life. We sell significantly more omnibus than we do monthly comics or trades. So like that first trade volume, we have sold 13 prints of. I think we might be on our 14th, and those are on average 3,000 to 5,000. So, I mean, there's somewhere around 60,000 copies of that omnibus rolling around. And for some reason, I think horror fans don't necessarily care about the sort of monthly comics, but they'll read a big brick of horror comics.
Yeah.
So it's always worked that way. And I've gone to horror conventions for fun, and I'll be walking by racks and I'll see like a bunch of Hack/Slash omnibuses, and no one cares that I'm there, has no interest in me at all. They're just like, oh, we read big bricks of horror comics.
Yeah.
So
and then they show you the cover and like, have you read this? It's really good.
Yeah. I always see like, you know, cosplayers at horror conventions, you know, dressed as Cassian. I'm like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna walk by.
Yeah.
Hey, cool costume, and that's it. You know.
Cool.
Oh man, you can make their day though.
I had two final questions, but so one was like, what's your favorite vignette from the Heavy Metal movie and all that? But I think a better question is, I think Judah wanted to ask you something about Megadeth.
Oh yeah, tell me about Megadeth.
Oh,
And why? But here's the more importantly, why were we told that we needed to ask you about Megadeth?
So, I mean, when I first started having, I was literally my first week. It was also C2E2. So I started at the magazine as I was a blind editor. That's what I was. And Heavy Metal was doing a book. Just Jeff Carlos had got this thing where they got the rights to the Megadeth library essentially, and Megadeth was doing like a greatest hits album. And so we were illustrating and writing comics based on Megadeth songs. So I did one. A whole bunch of people did one. It's a big fat book, and a whole bunch.
I need to get my.
Yeah, it's a big, it's a giant ass book. But and you know, I grew up on Megadeth. Like that was the Megadeth T-shirt, and I had all the albums. I used to listen to Killing Is My Business, Business Good in my car.
Rust in Peace.
And Rust in Peace. Yeah, I was driving around listening to Megadeth. So it was cool. I did one of the stories. I did Punishment Due, and
isn't that based on the Punisher?
It is, yeah, kind of, yeah. And so we did a signing because Megadeth happened to be in town in Chicago for C2E2. So Jeff got everybody together and did a Dave Mustaine signing, and we all got to sign with him. And Jeff was like, "Hey, I need you to interview Dave, so get to know him while you're doing the signing because you're going to interview him live on Sci-Fi Network or whatever."
Did you shit yourself or what?
I mean, I was like super intimidated because I don't know if you ever met Dave Mustaine, but not only is he Dave Mustaine, he's really tall and he's really soft spoken, but he's really intense.
I've seen him live 3 times, and that's it. I would love to meet Dave Mustaine.
I mean, and I didn't know I was doing this that morning. Like, it was just one of those things. Like, I came there. Oh, hey, you're gonna do a signing, and then you're gonna go interview Dave Mustaine. I was like, I'm not prepared. I'm not, and but he was cool, super gracious, and nice guy. It was just before his diagnosis. He had cancer, and he's beat that, and he's back in the metal game. And but he was super cool, and I sat there for a half hour interviewing Dave Mustaine, like trying not to look like an idiot. So I'm sure I did anyway. But then I posted that stuff around him. Friends of mine from high school were just like, "What the fuck are you doing? Are you hanging out with Dave Mustaine?"
Damn.
Hey, look at me.
Crazy.
But it was pretty cool. Yeah, and he's a comic book fan. like you said, he loves the Punisher. He was, reading 60s Marvel stuff when he was a kid, and then as he got older, he stuck with Punisher and Ghost Rider, I think, and a couple other stuff. So he was always into that kind of stuff,
Metal people love comics.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is- and I'm not as much of a metal. I was a metal guy in high school, and I kind of turned into a goth and rap guy, and just not related to each other. But those two things I turned into, and then, but I didn't keep up with it as much metal. But that has always been my experience with that sort of, they're pretty similar, right? I mean, it's all
Right.
if you were picking up like Pantera, you were also picking up Spawn, probably.
Right. Hello, me. Meet the real me.
Yeah, I love that. It's like Sweating Bullets. I'll always remember that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So-
Do you have something else?
I was gonna say, ask about the movie. Ask the movie question.
You really want to know that?
I want to know the answer to both of the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite vignette from the 1981 heavy metal movie?
Let's see. I mean, it's a tough one because I like it all. I gotta say, I probably B-17, just because it's the zombie designs and stuff are so cool, and the song that plays during that one is great.
Was that the Blue Oyster Cult veteran of the Psychic Wars?
No, it's and I'm gonna lose my credit for not knowing the song top of my head, but
Yeah.
but it's a great song.
Fake fan. No, just kidding.
Yeah. It's the one that's, Come Take a Ride, right? That's the I'd have to look it up because my brain is shot, but I was drawing all day, so no memory. But I love that one. It's a horror story, and it's got cool. It's like World War II and zombies. Like, how cool is that?
It's
Yeah.
scary. Like as a kid, that was like scary to me.
Yeah, and they're like these drippy green-eyed zombies.
Yeah.
They're very. That one's super cool. I always liked the Captain Stern one when I was a kid. I always liked funny stuff. So like that, and the one with the aliens that kind of run like a janitorial service cleanup thing, whatever, those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen it. I saw it so many times in my teens and 20s. And then when I took this job, I had a refresher watch to catch back up, and I was like, just shocked at how ahead of the game it is in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
How well it holds up, especially like story-wise. Some of the animation, obviously they were on a budget, so some of the animation is not as as great.
Still pretty good.
It's still pretty good. Yeah, it's an impressive movie. And I mean, that thing is so influential, and you see that in so many other works. Like, some people came up wanting to make adult animation after they saw heavy metal, and we still don't have a ton of American adult animation.
That's
More.
As an 11-year-old, I was very drawn to the vignettes that had boobies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other one, for that alone, I mean, she's in the pool and she comes out and all that. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
a very,
Right.
because I remember watching that stuff. My dad was, again, a big sci-fi nerd and stuff, and he loved that movie, and he let me watch it probably, I don't know, 12, 13 or something.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, which maybe a little earlier, I can't remember.
Just
like
the time
that-
for the awakening. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I remember like that, and then watching Wizards, the Bakshi movie, and Fire and Ice. There was like this little mini burst of like, adult animation in the 80s. The Bakshi stuff, and also if you've ever seen
Was Fritz the Cat? Was Fritz the
Yeah.
Cat from that time?
yeah, a little before that, but and then there's a Stargate Stargaze: The Legend of Orin. You ever seen that animated movie?
No.
Really-
That's on my list now.
And Rock and Rule, that was all those came out at the same time. Definitely see Stargazer. It's crazy that it exists. It's called The Legend of Orin.
Okay.
Legend of Orin.
Yeah, it has. Let's see. The Legend. I just want to make sure I got it. Legend of Orin.
Legend of Orin.
Star Chaser. I'm sorry, Star Chaser. The Legend of Orin.
Okay, cool.
But it's
Awesome.
a weird kind of. I don't think it was a big budget. It wasn't a wide release, but it's one of the better sci-fi animated movies. I recommend it all the time. Can't believe I forget the name, but I was drawing all day, so my brain is mush. But yeah, definitely recommend checking that one out too.
Awesome.
And then real quick, what's your favorite song from the movie?
He said from that one vignette.
Yeah, that one I can't remember.
That's your favorite song. Okay. I thought you were saying that was your favorite part and the song made it your favorite part. Okay.
I have
That's
to
also
look it
your
up now
favorite song.
because I don't want to fuck up.
That's right.
Let's see. It is. I don't know what that is. I got the heavy metal movie. What heavy metal?
The
now I've
vignette
got-
called?
What's that?
What's the vignette called?
It's B-17 is what it's called.
B-17. Bunch of World War II pilots crash, and then a bunch of zombies start like infesting their bomber, and it's really scary. Like there's just zombies and crashed planes everywhere.
Taking a Ride by Don Felder. Taking a Ride.
Taking a ride. Okay.
Yeah. That song is cool. I like that one.
Cool.
Yeah, I gotta, it's funny, like I think we had the vinyl record when I was a kid that my dad had. So I remember us playing it like that, but I haven't bought the soundtrack in a few years. So maybe it's time for me to get refamiliarized.
The two that come to mind for me is Veteran of the Psychic Wars by Blue Oyster Cult. Just that, like, I love that song. And then Sammy Hagar, It's Your One-Way Ticket to Midnight.
Oh yeah, that one is, that's like the most recognizable one, because that one was a radio hit too. So,
Right.
and it's got the title check, Call It Heavy Metal, right? It's got the, classic.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Ladies, gentlemen, MBs, that is the end of our show. Mr. Tim Seeley, thank you for joining us. A little bit of your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Always-
Absolutely. Don't forget to check the link in the description. Even if you already bought it, you probably should go ahead and get the hardcover. We didn't really talk about what was in it, but there are extra things in the hardcover stuff that's, even if you have that one, it's kind of
Yeah, 9 pages of news story plus a timeline that collects a bunch of stuff and 8 new pinups.
There you
In
go.
it.
So it's still worth it.
And read heavy metal too.
And read heavy metal. I was super late to the game, probably by like 30 years, and
That's
we're good
right.
to go.
That's-
Thank you all for
Cool.
voting. Thank you for voting. But
Yes.
shit's not over. Wash your hands, wear a mask, stay socially distanced, and we are out of here. Wait. Before you turn it off, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for making it to the end. I also have a couple things to ask. First, don't forget to take your sexy ass to the description and find the links you need to support this creator. But almost as important, if you liked this video, smash that like and subscribe button while leaving us a comment telling us who you'd like us to interview in the future. Stay nerdy.